Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's your boy Maroon. Haven't been on the channel a while, but I've been working on some things, and today we're going to start a brand new series talking about tech tips. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction into how to take apart your gearbox for the first time. For all those first time guys who want to get into teching but are a little nervous to take apart their gearbox. Let's head on over to the workbench and get started. Alright guys, so we're at the first stage here. We've got the upper off and the stock off. My first tech tip is going to be organizing all your stuff, keeping it all together, not just tossing everything everywhere. I have all the stock components here. I guess I should throw that with the stock stuff. And then I have the upper here. I know there's not too many parts yet, but I also have this magnetic tool holder that will hold your tools or screws or whatever. It's a great little tray to keep your stuff organized so it doesn't get lost and you can keep everything in check. Cool. Alright guys, we're at the second stage now. We just got the gearbox all by itself. I've taken everything apart and I've got it all neat and organized over there. I'm just gonna go over something real quick. I didn't mention or go over any of the taking all this stuff apart. If you can't get to this stage, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Or go find another video. This is for the people who are ready to take this apart, but are nervous too for the first time. Let's go and start taking out all these screws here. There's a bunch of them all around. I need to remove those before I can open up the gearbox shell. Sometimes those screws will be on this side of the gearbox, but that's the difference with the G&G guns, is they're on this side. And just to note, this gun does not have a quick change spring, as you can see here. So when you pop this guy open, you have to be extra careful that that spring doesn't go flying all over the place and you lose it or something, or break something in the process. You want to be careful with that. I'll show you a quick little technique that I use that kind of helps not shoot it across the room. Alright guys, so I like to use this tool here. You can use any small screwdriver, but I just like to use one that has a flat tip on the top, and this is a Torx screwdriver. In case you're wondering, it looks like a little star. I like to flip over the gearbox to this side. Make sure you hold on to it kind of tightly so that it doesn't explode when you do that. Slide that on in. And then I also like to grab a fine flathead screwdriver along with a larger flathead screwdriver to start taking this apart. When I do this, I like to stick this in and push downward on it, like this kind of a motion. Not too hard, but just enough to hold the spring guide in place so that things don't go flying when I open it up. Now first, I'm gonna hold down on the cylinder, insert the flathead screwdriver in between the nozzle and the gearbox there. It's a little hard to see, but insert it in there, and as you can see, it starts to kind of slowly pop open. Okay. Alright, so now we kind of just wiggle it up. Make sure you keep pressure on this so you don't lose your spring and spring guide. And I've already kind of loosened this off camera, but loosen it up, hold onto your spring here. Gearbox shell gone. This wants to pop out as well, so just be careful that you don't lose all that. And then get your screwdriver in there, loosen off your spring, pull that out, boom. So that's your spring and spring guide. This is a cheaper spring guide because it doesn't have any ball bearings or washers on the end here. But that's what you get with a budget gun, and that's okay. So there's our spring. Set that off to the side. And now we've got our one side of the gearbox shell, and currently I have already taken this apart and shimmed it, so there's shims in here. I'm just gonna leave them in place because I don't want to lose them or anything. And then I'll go over all the parts here. The gears don't look aligned because they've kind of bounced out of place, so they're kind of loose now. But first gear here, I guess, is your bevel gear. Had to think about it for a sec. This is your bevel gear, I guess because it has a bevel on it. I don't know. That's just what it's called. I'll put that to the side there. I'm gonna have to remove all the air seal components here. Maybe I should have done this first. But in order to do this, screwdriver here, pull up on this spring. I like to keep a thumb on the other side of the spring so it doesn't go shooting across the room. And then that's for your tappet plate there. And then that will just pop up nice and easy. Just make sure you don't lose that spring. So this all here, this is your tappet plate, this guy here, and your air nozzle. And those go together just like that. That just seats in there nice. Put that off to the side. And then here we have the cylinder head, this whole part here along with this brass part. And then we have our cylinder, this blue part here. Some cylinders have a full cylinder where they don't have this window cut in it. Some have the window cut halfway here, or you could flip this around and have the window here. I don't know why you would do that, but I'm sure somebody's done it before. So that's all that. And then now we got our piston here and our piston head. And that all goes together just like that. Nice and easy. So we've got the air seal stuff out of the way and our first gear. The second gear is the spur gear, which is that gear there, but I'll go to the sector gear first because it is easier to take it out. So this is your sector gear here. Can we focus? I don't know. There we are. This is your sector gear. As you can see, if it focuses, there's a sector of gears on it. So there's only gears on one side. On this side, you can see all the teeth that meet up with your spur gear. But that's the sector gear. Put that off to the side. And then here you've got your anti-reversal latch. This guy here. This keeps the piston, when it slides back, if you let off the trigger before it cycles, it'll hold it back in place so that it doesn't have forward cycling, which isn't great for the motor. So we'll pull that out of the way. It can be a pain sometimes for installing. So this is your anti-reversal latch there. Just put that off to the side. And then here we got our spur gear. It's the biggest gear. So we've got all three gears there. Yeah. And then now we've got our bushings in here along with some leftover shims. All this. And then we've got our wiring harness all up here. Those go to the motor. These are the motor leads. This is where you plug your battery in. You got your MOSFET, all the wires up to the trigger system. As you can see, this isn't the stock trigger. The original trigger for the gun was a flat face trigger, if you know your ARP9s, and it was not this curved trigger, but it's the only one I had because I broke the other trigger. Yeah, I broke it, so I put this one in its place temporarily. I'll pull that out for you. Not sure if you heard that, but a very loud car just drove by. So you got that. There's a little spring in it on the other side there. There we go. There's your trigger. Pretty basic. And then you've got a nice little micro switch trigger system. This is your safety bar. So when you switch your gun over into the safety position, this guy swings up to that position, just like that, right there. And it blocks your trigger from pulling so you don't shoot it. Yeah, that's your safety bar. And then this is your micro switch trigger. So the trigger leads, they go and they plug in here. And then there's a tiny little button here. Let me see if I can point it out to you. A little button right here. Kind of hard to see. But that's what activates the trigger. And that's why the ARP9s have such snappy trigger response right out of the box, because once you click that button, it does a cycle for you. And the reset is very short because you just have to be clicking that button. So that's pretty much it, guys. I've got your fancy, but not so fancy, gearbox here. Now we've got everything apart, I'm going to kind of talk over each part, explain why it's good or bad, whether you should upgrade it or not. You're getting a more budget gun if you go for something like the ARP or one of the Combat Machines series that are more of the budget to mid-tier guns. This is our motor here. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's a long type, which a long type goes with your M4 or version 2 gearboxes. 25K, I believe, is the revolutions per minute. Now, if you want higher speed, you'll go to a higher number. There's 30, 35, 40, 45 even. And the list goes on. There's also higher torque motors as well that will be able to pull heavier springs. But this is kind of the first thing you'll probably want to upgrade, as it's not the most robust, best motor out of the box. But that's okay. That's what you get with a more budget gun. So here we've got your tappet plate. This is your air nozzle here. There's fancier air nozzles on the market, but this one does the trick off the start. There's no need to upgrade this right away. As well as the tappet plate, it works great. There's not much to say about that. So these components, again, they're not bad, but they're not the best. You might want to upgrade these down the road. By upgrading these parts here, you'll increase your air seal overall. That will increase your shot-to-shot FPS, consistency, as well as you will up your FPS, because the better the air seal, the more FPS you get. And ultimately, that will increase performance in accuracy and range and all of that fun stuff. Nothing wrong with these components, but they could definitely use an upgrade. Moving over to the piston here. This is probably one of the second part that you'll be replacing next to the motor. So the reason you'll be replacing this is because only the first tooth here is metal. The rest are all plastic. Now they're all covered in grease, so it's kind of hard to tell. At some point, it will shred itself and die. So because these plastic teeth are more fragile than metal, eventually they will wear down and break off. Next we have our piston head here. As you can see, it's ported, so that means there's holes in it, which is a good thing. This is a good little cylinder head. Could replace it, but you don't need to right off the start. This is probably a part you'll want to replace sometime soon if you want more FPS or more rounds per second out of your gun. Because it doesn't have any ball bearings or washers on here, it's harder on your spring and your gearbox altogether. So that's a part that could use some upgrading. This anti-reversal latch is kind of the standard for design, but I prefer the one in my Crytac here. You'll see in the next video, it makes it a little easier to put it back together. But this works. there's no need to replace it. And then we've got our shims here. This is something that takes time, and I would not recommend doing the first time you open up a gearbox. But once you know what you're doing, shimming your gearbox is a great idea. Or shimming your gears, I mean, is a great idea, as it will improve the sound of your gun, the FPS, and the performance. Or the RPS, not the FPS. It will just improve your gun overall, speed-wise, trigger response and all that. And it'll make it a little easier on your motor. Next we got the gears here. Again, nothing wrong with these gears. Not sure what the ratio is on these, but if you want to increase your rounds per second, then I would recommend going for a lower gear ratio or for a dual sector gear build, as that will increase your fire rate significantly there. And last, we got our bushings here. Some people like bushings, some people like bearings. It's a preference, it's up to you. Some people like bushings for higher stress builds, and some people like bearings for just protecting your gears and everything. So that's pretty much everything, guys. I hope you got something out of this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you liked it and what I can improve on for the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.